Ever typed something in a rush? Like when you don't even realize you're mashing the keyboard,
Yeah.
and your phone just like figures it out.
Right.
Or maybe you've tried talking to your voice assistant with like a mouthful of breakfast and it somehow understands what you're saying.
It is remarkable, isn't it?
It's like AI is developing telepathic powers.
You see, the journey of language AI, it's been fascinating, really, starting with something a lot simpler than what we use today, optical character recognition, OCR.
OCR, oh, it was like those old scanners back in the day.
Yeah.
You'd scan a document and it would like try to make it editable,
Precisely.
sometimes with hilarious results, especially when my handwriting was, let's just say, creative that day.
OCR was groundbreaking for its time. It really was. It actually, its origins go all the way back to the 1920s, but it didn't really take off until the 50s and 60s.
Wow.
The idea was to take images of text, whether it was printed out or even handwritten, and then convert it into digital text that you could actually edit.
Okay.
It was a huge step, really, toward, bridging that gap between the physical world and the digital world.
That sounds so simple, just in theory, but I can only imagine the technology behind it, even back then, must have been incredibly
And
complex.
you're absolutely right. It was. Early OCR systems, they were quite limited. They needed, standardized fonts, high-quality images just to work properly.
Right.
They worked by analyzing, essentially, the shapes of the characters that were in an image, and then they try to match those shapes to this, pre-programmed database.
Hmm.
It was a very, very literal, rule-based approach.
Okay. So how did we go from recognizing those simple standardized fonts with OCR to the AI we have today, which can understand our slang, emojis, even our typos?
That's where artificial intelligence, or AI, comes into play. AI techniques, especially these things called neural networks, they completely revolutionized OCR. I mean, completely changed the game.
Neural networks.
Imagine this. Neural networks, they gave those OCR systems the ability to actually learn and adapt, much like, how the human brain works.
Okay.
So suddenly, OCR wasn't just about matching shapes anymore. It was starting to actually understand the context.
So instead of just seeing the letter A, for example,
Yeah.
it started to understand that the A in, apple, is the same as the A in fantastic, even if the font is completely different, or if I scribbled it down really fast.
Exactly. And not only that, but it could also start to differentiate between characters that look very similar based on the letters around them, or even the overall structure of the entire text. So OCR went from just recognizing those basic shapes to understanding context.
Wow.
And that laid the groundwork for the AI that we have today.
So the ability of my phone to decipher my, let's call them expressive text messages, is all thanks to those early OCR systems.
It is quite remarkable, isn't it?
I never would have made that connection.
And if you think that's impressive, OCR was actually also the foundation for even more advanced technology like automatic speech recognition, or ASR, that powers the voice assistants we were just talking about.
Are you saying that the technology that used to struggle with my handwritten grocery lists is like the grandparent of the technology that lets me boss around my smart speaker?
Size.
That's wild. So how does a computer go from, zeros and ones to actually understanding what I'm saying?
It's a fascinating process. It starts with a microphone. That microphone captures your voice, converts those sound waves into a digital format, which the computer can then analyze.
Okay.
And that digital audio, it's scrutinized for very specific characteristics, things like frequency, intensity, even rhythm. And this helps isolate the individual sounds, what we call phonemes.
Phonemes. Okay, that's ringing a bell, but give me a refresher. What are they exactly?
Certainly. Phonemes, they're essentially the smallest units of sound in speech that can actually change a word's meaning.
Okay.
For example, if you think about the words cat and bat, the only difference in sound there is the C and the B, right?
Right.
Those distinct sounds, those are phonemes.
So it's not about the letter itself, but the sound that letter makes. Because C and K are different letters, but they can make the same sound in certain words.
You've got it. Okay. And just like those OCR systems were matching shapes to a database, automatic speech recognition does something very similar, but with these phones.
Really?
It matches them to known patterns in its own massive database. And that database is built by analyzing millions of different speech samples.
So it's like AI is learning to speak by listening to us talk. That's kind of meta when you think about it. But how does it go from just recognizing those individual sounds to understanding whole sentences?
That's where things get even more interesting.
That's where things get even more interesting. So AI is listening to us, breaking down our speech into these tiny little phones, comparing them to this massive library of sounds it has. But how does it go from there to actually, like, understanding what we're saying?
It is a very complex process.
Yeah.
But AI has a secret weapon. Language
A
models.
language model.
Yeah, these are essentially sets of rules, probabilities based on how we naturally use language.
So it's like grammar rules, but for AI.
In a way, yeah, you could say that, but instead of being like these hard-coded rules, language models are more like sophisticated statistical analysis, really, of how words are typically used together. So they help the AI figure out the most likely meaning of a sentence based on the order of the words, grammatical structures, common phrases.
So if I say, the cat sat on the, and then pause, the AI could use its language model to predict that the next word is probably going to be mat, couch, or, keyboard in my case.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the more data these language models are trained on, the better they become at predicting and understanding all the nuances of human language.
So it's like AI is constantly reading every book, every article, every tweet ever written just to get better at understanding us.
Laughs, you could say that.
Wow.
And to make things even more impressive, this whole process, this analyzing of phones and applying these language models, it's happening in real time as you're speaking.
That's incredible. It seems like magic, but it's really just like really, really brilliant engineering.
It really is. But as with any complex system, there can be challenges.
Like what?
Well, think about all the variety in the way that we speak. Accents, dialects, different speeds of speech, even just background noise.
Right.
All those can really throw a wrench into the works.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Even I, as a human, sometimes I have trouble understanding someone with a very strong accent.
Yeah.
Or if there's a lot of noise around.
Exactly. And while these modern ASR systems, they're incredibly adept at filtering out that noise and adapting to different speech patterns, they're not perfect. There are still situations where they might misinterpret a word or a phrase.
That makes sense. So knowing those limitations, are there things that, we can do as users to maybe improve our experience with ASR and make sure we're understood correctly?
Absolutely. Speaking clearly at a moderate pace, that can significantly improve the accuracy. And being mindful of that background noise, finding a quiet spot for an important voice command or using a headset maybe for clearer communication, those can make a really big difference.
So it's kind of like a two-way street. AI is doing its best to understand us, but we can also meet it halfway by being mindful of how we speak.
Exactly. And I think that's an important takeaway from this whole deep dive. Understanding how this technology works can actually empower us to use it more effectively.
It's like anything else, right? The more you know about how something works, the better you are at actually using it.
Precisely. And it's not just about, improving accuracy, but knowing how ASR works can help us appreciate those incredible advancements that have been made in the field.
It's true. I mean, the fact that we can now have a relatively natural conversation with a machine is kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it.
It really is. And these advancements go beyond just those virtual assistants. I mean, ASR is being used in countless ways that are really changing how we live and interact with the world around us.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, one of the most exciting areas is real-time language translation.
You mean like those sci-fi movies where someone is speaking one language and their device is instantly translating it into another language for the person they're talking to?
Exactly like that. It's not science fiction anymore.
Right.
It's a reality. And it's all thanks to these advancements in ASR, machine learning. Imagine a world where those language barriers are practically non-existent.
It would be incredible. What else?
Another area where ASR is making a huge impact is in assistive technology. For individuals with speech impairments, ASR can be completely life-changing.
Oh, so?
Imagine someone who has difficulty speaking being able to use their voice to control their environment, to communicate their needs, or even create written content, all just by speaking.
Wow. So ASR is not just about convenience. It's about really empowering people and creating a more inclusive world.
Absolutely. And as the technology keeps evolving, we can only expect even more innovative and impactful applications to emerge.
This is definitely making me think differently about those automated customer service lines. Maybe there's hope for them yet.
Perhaps. But speaking of evolving technology, we've talked about how AI hears and understands our spoken language. But what about its ability to read and interpret written text?
You mean like how AI is being used to summarize documents, or even write articles?
Exactly. The field of natural language processing, NLP, it's vast. And AI is playing an increasingly important role in how we interact with all that written information.
Okay, so let's talk about that then.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about that then, NLP.
Okay.
We've covered how AI is like mastering spoken language.
Right.
But now I'm curious about the written word.
Sure.
Is AI coming for my job as a podcast host anytime soon?
What?
I'm mostly kidding.
You're safe for now, I think.
Okay.
But you're right to be thinking about the implications of natural language processing.
Yeah.
It's already changing how we handle information overload.
Information overload. That's the perfect way to put it. It's like I'm constantly drowning in articles and reports and social media and everything else.
Yeah.
It's really hard to keep up with it all.
It is, and that's where NLP comes in. AI can sift through these mountains of data so much faster than any human can.
Right.
Pull out the most relevant information and then summarize it in a way that's easy to understand.
So instead of spending hours reading through, these really dense documents, I could just have AI give me the key takeaways in minutes.
That's the idea, and it goes beyond just summarizing.
Okay.
Imagine having AI analyze customer reviews for your business, identify potential PR crises that are brewing online, or even personalize educational content for students based on their learning style.
Now that you mention it, I have noticed that news aggregators seem to be getting, scarily good at showing me articles that perfectly match my interests.
Right.
Sometimes even before I know I'm interested in them.
Sauce. See, that's NLP in action. AI is getting better and better at understanding not just what we're saying or writing, but what it means, in a larger context.
Okay.
It can analyze sentiment, identify trends, and even predict future behavior based on those patterns in language.
Okay, this is starting to sound less like helpful assistant and more like, mind-reading supercomputer.
Right.
So is there anything AI can't do with language?
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
Fair enough.
While AI has made remarkable progress, it's important to remember that it still relies on the data it's been trained on.
So if the data is flawed or biased, the AI's output will be too.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's why the ethical development and deployment of AI is absolutely crucial, especially when we're talking about something as powerful as language. We need to make sure that the data used to train these systems is representative, it's unbiased, and that the technology is used responsibly.
It's a lot to consider, but it's clear that we're, entering this new era of communication.
Yeah.
From deciphering our messy handwriting to summarizing these really complex reports, AI is definitely changing the way we interact with language.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Really?
As AI continues to evolve, who knows what amazing breakthroughs are out there.
Yeah.
Perhaps we'll even have AI that can write poetry that rivals the greats, compose symphonies that move us to tears, or even have meaningful conversations that challenge our assumptions and help us see the world in a completely new light.
Now, those are some deep dive topics for future episodes.
I
It seems like the more we learn about language AI, the more we realize there is to learn.
couldn't agree more. This field is constantly evolving, pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
Yeah.
It's really a testament to human ingenuity and our relentless pursuit of understanding one of the most fundamental aspects of what makes us human, language.
And on that note, we'll leave you with plenty to ponder.
Wow.
Join us next time as we take another deep dive into the world of AI and explore the frontiers of human knowledge. Until then, keep asking questions, keep exploring, and as always, thanks for listening.